friends, how are you? Happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm so happy to see you today. St. Patrick's Day is one of my very favorite holidays because it celebrates Ireland, where my great-grandmother was from. And it also, the color is green, and green is my favorite color, so I'm wearing one of my favorite green shirts. So that was one thing that was making me happy today. The second thing that made me happy today was a really, really pretty bush of forsythia that we saw on our walk today. And forsythia, if you don't know what it is, it's got these kind of spiky branches and these pretty little yellow flowers. And once you have, it starts to bloom, it looks like this gigantic just cloud of yellow. So it's just a really, really fun bush to see. And you always see it in my neighborhood here in Louisville right around this time of year. So it's very nice to see that today. Today's book is not one that I'm super familiar with, but I found it among Uncle Ben's books, and it's by one of my very favorite author and illustrators when I was a kid. So I hope you like it. It's a little bit related to St. Patrick's Day. So if you guessed that yesterday, you were right. And my hair's doing silly things today. But I hope wherever you are that you saw something that made you happy today, and you wore a color that made you happy, and I hope this book makes you happy too. All right, are you ready to get reading? Okay, let's go. Okay, friends, so today's book is Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato, an Irish folktale by Tommy DePaolo. I love Tommy DePaolo. He did the Strega Nona books, if you know those. And once I met him when I was a kid. I met him at the Highland Library in Louisville. So let's read Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato. So here, Tommy DePaolo tells us a story about his grandfather. He used to tell him lots and lots of stories. And so when he read the story that inspired Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato, he imagined it being one of the stories that his grandfather would tell him. So now we can just listen to the stories and imagine someone we love may have told this story before. Isn't that nice? All right, Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato. An Irish folktale retold and illustrated by Tommy DePaolo. Looks like Jamie O'Rourke and his wife Eileen are down here with their cat and their dog. Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man in all of Ireland. He would do anything to avoid working, especially if it had to do with growing potatoes. Jamie O'Rourke, his wife Eileen, would say, "We'll have nothing to eat this winter if you don't go out and dig up the pratties." "Oh, the saints preserve us," Jamie would whine. "Me back's as sore as can be. Sure as I'm telling you, wife, you'll have to dig them up yourself. I'll break in two if I so much as get up out of this bed." So Eileen, who had done all the planting and watering and weeding anyhow, would go out to the tiny garden and dig up the smallest potatoes in Ireland, all because Jamie was too lazy to dig a larger garden and had no money to buy good potato seed. Then poor Eileen wrenched her back and was laid up in bed. Oh no, but she's got a puppy and a kitty to keep her company. St. Bridget and the Virgin Mary herself must have smiled on Eileen O'Rourke, the village women said. Why, it's the first rest she's had since she married Jamie O'Rourke. Look at these ladies. I like their shawls. Those look very cozy. With Eileen in bed, Jamie began to worry. No Eileen to dig meant no pratties all winter, and no pratties meant no food. I think pratties are potatoes. "Oh, poor me," wailed Jamie. "I'll starve to death. I'd best go to church and confess to Father O'Malley. There's no telling how soon old death will be knocking on me door." Because of the no potatoes. That's the only reason. So even though it was midnight, Jamie set out for the church. He was about halfway down the hill when he heard singing and a tap-tap-tapping sound. I think Jamie is exaggerating because he's kind of silly. But look at what he's wearing to go to church. That's very silly. "Sure, and I wouldn't be knowing," Jamie whispered, "but I swear it's a leprechaun." And it is. Sure enough, sitting in a circle of ferns in the moonlight was a leprechaun singing and hammering tiny nails into the heels of the fairy boots he was making. Jamie knew just what to do. Look at those tiny little shoes, and the leprechaun's making the shoes. There's Jamie, way up there. He crept up and grabbed the little man by his coattails and held firm. "Let me go! Let me go!" the leprechaun shouted. "Not on your life," Jamie said. "Not until you show me where you keep your pot of gold." Oh, the shoes are everywhere. It's not very nice to grab someone by their coattails. Now, everyone in Ireland knows that leprechauns make boots and dancing shoes for the fairies, who pay them with gold. And everyone knows that if you catch a leprechaun, he'll pay for his freedom with his pot of gold. But this leprechaun was cleverer than most. "Oh, please, Mr. Mortal Man," he pleaded. "I'm just starting out making fairy shoes, and I only have 1 or 2 pieces of gold in my pot. Won't you take a wish instead?" "Why, what would I wish for?" Jamie asked. "Me, who's about to die of starvation because my wife is sick in bed and can't dig the praties for the winter? And they're such puny praties anyhow." "Well," said the leprechaun, reaching into his pocket, "you could wish for the biggest pratie in the world. It would last all winter, and you wouldn't have to do anything more than plant this seed, water it, and wait." Look at that tiny little seed. Do you think it can make the biggest potato in the world? That sounded wonderful to Jamie. "Done!" he shouted, and as the leprechaun dropped the seed into Jamie's hand, Jamie let go of his coattails, and off that leprechaun scampered. He even has a little bag. "Run away, little leprechaun!" When Eileen heard what he had done, she was furious. "Jamie O'Rourke, you're not only the laziest man in Ireland, but a fool as well. Giving up a pot of gold for a pratie seed." Pratie seed? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. "Well, I'm going to plant this seed and water it, and you'll see," Jamie said. And out he went. I love this dog. He looks like a dog that lives in my building whose name is Mr. Bentley. So I'm going to call that dog Bentley. What do you think the cat's name would be? I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. In faith, Ellen did see. In no time at all, the biggest, finest potato plant had sprouted out of the ground, followed by the potato itself. It was so big, it pushed up not only all the dirt in the garden, but the garden shed and the corner of the cottage as well. Look, their cottage is tipping. "Well, surely now it's ready to dig," Jamie said proudly. "Look at that giant potato!" That's so big. He hoed all around it, but he couldn't dig that pratie out of the ground. Pratie? I don't know, guys. He got a beam and a big rock and tried to pry it out. He pushed and he pushed, but it wouldn't budge. And as he was pondering what to do, his neighbor passed by on his way to the village. He couldn't believe his eyes. He couldn't wait to tell everyone in the village what he had seen. And before you knew it, the hill up to Jamie's was filled with villagers coming to see the big potato. Look at how big that potato is. It's almost as big as the house. It's definitely as big as that shed. Sheep! I love sheep. "Where did it come from?" they asked. Jamie told them about the lucky night he had caught the leprechaun and how smart he had been. "Why, anyone could have gotten a pot of gold," he bragged. "But the biggest pratie in the world? Well, that took some doing." I love you. See the little doggy and the kitty? Ooh, she's got pretty braids. I like that hat. It looks a lot like Jamie's. "However did you outsmart a leprechaun?" they all asked at once. Jamie hesitated and scratched his head. "We'll help you dig up your pratie, Jamie, if you tell us how you did it." And they grabbed shovels and hoes and started to dig. Oh, look, everybody's helping. Isn't it nice when people help each other? They dug and they pushed and they shoved until the potato flew up out of its hole. It rolled down the hill faster and faster until it reached the bottom, where it bounced up high and came to a stop, wedged between the stone walls on either side of the road. Look at that. It's stuck. What to do now? "This pratie is so big that no one, no cart, nothing can get by," the constable complained to Father O'Malley. "How's a body to get in or out of the village?" "What shall we do?" the villagers wailed. Then they all looked at Jamie and said, "It's your pratie. You'll have to move it out of our way." "Well," Eileen spoke up, "there's more than enough pratie for everyone. Why don't you all take some?" So the villagers sawed and chopped and carted off huge pieces of potato, while Jamie sat on the stone wall and watched. Look at everybody's getting a little piece of the potato. Or a big piece of the potato, because it's a big potato. All winter long, everyone had potato to eat and eat and eat, until no one wanted to see or hear of potato again. Look at all those potatoes. In the spring, Jamie said, "I saved a potato eye for a seed, and it's just about time to plant it." "Oh, no," the villagers all cried. "If you promise not to plant it, Jamie, we'll promise before St. Patrick and all the saints to see that you and Eileen always have plenty to cook and eat. We don't want another giant pratie around here." Jamie smiled and agreed. What a perfect life for a lazy man. "And so you see, darling Eileen," Jamie told her, "I wasn't such a fool with that leprechaun after all." And Eileen had to admit that Jamie O'Rourke was right. The end. Look at that happy leprechaun. Hi, everybody. Did you like that book? It's pretty cool, right? This is Uncle Ben. Say hi, Uncle Ben.
Hi.
He's also wearing green. And Uncle Ben, are you going to read tomorrow's story?
Sure.
What story is it going to be?
That's a secret.
It's a secret. Is it going to be a good story?
I think it's a good story.
I think it's a good story.
It's one of my
too.
favorites.
It's one of our favorites. All right, we'll see you all tomorrow. But until then, happy St. Patrick's Day. We're sending you a big hug from wherever we are to wherever you are.
Bye.
Bye.